Hello, I'm FX and welcome back to another episode of my Minecraft Xbox Update Adventures Let's Play. This is a Let's Play where I've been playing through the various updates that have come out for Minecraft on the console, building stuff, killing stuff, and of course destroying stuff, such as this big desert, which is not going to be a desert for much longer because I'm basically near the end of finally destroying this thing to the very core. I've cordoned off the river, so all I have to do is finally drain that over, which is going to be one of the goals today, and then I'm also going to be getting rid of just this big lump of like desert here, most of which is pretty thin, and then after that we'll have the desert entirely destroyed and we can finally work on what's going to be going in its place. That's right, it's a good week for destruction projects, and yeah, I'm looking forward to today going and get some sponges, dealing with the river finally, because in case you're curious, let me just show you actually. I've got this big river which I was using for concrete, production, because, you've got to make concrete somewhere, but as it turns out, you don't actually need much water to make concrete because you can just use the same, like, 2 bits of water. So instead I just have this big, like river ocean thing here, or just river, not river ocean, but we have this big river here, and I'm going to be finally draining it away because this is going to be the final boundary between the, the desert which is being destroyed and the desert which I'll let stay for now. So yeah, this is like the end boundary of what's going to be destroyed in its entirety. So I'm looking forward to that because it's always fun to destroy stuff, and it's also especially fun because I get to use my efficiency 5 shovel, and in case you're curious as to why this is so fun, I mean, it just does this, it instant melts stuff, and because the ground is so thin here, we get to do that really quickly, and we get to make a lot of progress with very little time. That's the dream anyway, and that's what we're doing in today's episode, so hopefully you'll do enjoy it. Let's get straight into sleeping, everyone's favourite part of the world, right? Honestly, the thing about sleeping is that I feel like it's something, it's like everyone's weakness, right? Like, everyone claims to be like super strong and super strong-minded, but I feel like unless you're only sleeping for, let's call it like 4 hours a night, I feel like you're not really very strong-minded because, the dream goal, like when you're awake, is to be like, yeah, I'm going to be as awake for as long as possible, going to get as much like cool worky stuff done, and then I can, relax and enjoy the rest of my time myself. But the truth is if you try to live your life like that, so let's just fly over to these sponges. They're all the way on the other side of the world, so we have to go to our destroyed monument, so it's going to be a fun journey. We have to take like two fun like sky journeys and a couple of minecarts. But yeah, basically, I feel like unless you're sleeping that long, you're not really a master of your willpower. You just think you are, maybe. So that's my theory I have right now. Because every morning I wake up and I'm like, you know what? If I just had 5 minutes, my life would be 100 times better. And then I'll do that like several times because the snooze button on alarms is like the worst thing in the world. Because sometimes you just really need it, but you don't have it. And sometimes if you just have like an infinite number of snoozes, you can just sit there and go, well, I'll just wake up in 5 more minutes. It's fine to be 5 minutes late to this thing, or like for me, like, I'll just have 5 minutes less like chill time before I start recording videos. That's the sort of thing like you run into and then you just do it infinitely, and my point here is that that's bad. Don't do that. Anyway, with that said, yeah, today, like I said, we're going to be, oh no, I made a big mistake there. We're gonna be flying over to the ocean monument first of all, because that's where I keep all of my sponges. So the land between here and there is like pretty dire, but whatever, we'll see it on both sides. It's not great, I know, but it'll get better, it's fine. But yeah, back to what I was saying, we're gonna be going to the ocean monument because that's where the sponges are at, and then we'll be destroying the river. It's gonna be a good time, and while we do that, I wanted to talk about what I've been up to this past week, because as this video goes live, I'm just flying to Germany for Gamescom. Like, this is the first time I've gone to a games I guess like a games convention in a very long time. There's something just about the whole idea of like, hey, you wait in a line, and every game convention has the same problem where like the lines for these things are getting longer and longer. But we're going to like a press day for the biggest one, because last year I went to Gamescom and it was like, oh yeah, if it's a short line, it's 2 hours. And to me, that means you wait in like 4 lines for a day, then you're done. You can wait in a theme park ride that was less than that. And that's the reason I was like kind of a little bit on the edge about whether that was... Where is that skeleton? There you are. Downside of like destroying this thing entirely is that somehow you get skeletons spawning all over the place. It's not a good thing. But yeah, basically, like it's the problem I find with most of them is like it's like a line simulator. You just like you wait in line after line after line, and if the game's not great, well, that's kind of a bad thing. And once I even waited in line, like, oh, I guess I'm talking about lines now rather than what I'm up to. But I once waited in a line that was some solid amount of time. Let's call it 40 minutes, thinking it was Dishonored 2 gameplay. And the worst thing is it wasn't, because it was a Dishonored 2 booth. It was a Dishonored 2 trailer that we just watched with a bunch of people. So I spent 40 minutes waiting in line for a trailer once, and that was the moment where I was like, this is officially the worst thing I've ever done. And yeah, the worst thing is after that trailer, you couldn't leave the room because, like, there were people at the door. Like, you probably could have if you asked, but they made it very clear they don't want you to leave the room. Then after that trailer for the game I actually did care about, they just did like this giant double as long trailer for a game I didn't care about, and I was like, this is the worst thing in the world. So yeah, games conventions, I feel like you have to really go like just for friendly reasons. If you want to just go for the games, you're going to be disappointed. In the same way, I guess a theme park, like, you couldn't really ever go to a theme park by yourself because of the same reason of, like, well, there's lines, and you gotta find a way to make lines enjoyable. So, like, go with someone you enjoy the company of. In fact, I've heard this a few times now, like, and a part of me thinks it really is a good idea. Like, if you're gonna go on a first date with someone, like, you know, someone that you're just hanging out for the first time or whatever, like, romantically or non-romantically, I guess, I'd say a theme park's a really good way to kind of test that. Not only because, like, you have to have, you know, you have something to talk about, because, oh yeah, I just went flying through the air on this magic machine. And they're like, wow, I did too, it was fun, and, you know, you're having that. But also, like, you know, supposedly you bond more when your heart rate's higher. So, like, you get scared, and then you like each other, and, you know, like, it's high-stakes stuff. If you either hate each other, or you love each other, and it saves you a lot of time. So, boom, that's, like, dating advice to Toy Cat right there. Go to a theme park. Never done it, because it'd be hard to convince someone to go to a theme park. But, you know, if you're that sort of person, if you live in an area where people can just go to theme parks on a whim, because why not? Or if you can convince people, I guess, then, boom, I've just given you the best idea in the world. So, yeah, now we have our sponges. I was scared for a second there I wouldn't have the sponges. We can finally drain away that river. And I'm looking forward to this bit because, again, like, the river's been, like, mostly drained. You can see the old path bit is entirely gone for the most part. But now we're in the bit that comes to the desert, and this is the fun bit because this is the bit that, like, actually is now the boundary between the old, you know, like, the non-destroyed desert and the now-destroyed desert. So I think I messed this up a little bit by spending too much time. The real pro tip when it comes to draining stuff is you have to destroy this stuff up here, drain this stuff up here as fast as you humanly can. Because if you don't, then it'll kind of haunt you forever like this. So, yeah, now from here, we'll just place one more. I'll be a little bit wasteful with sponges today, for the sake of time. Because usually if you're trying to drain stuff, you have to be, like, really tactical with every placement, I feel like. But with something like this, we can be a little bit less tactical, and just get it done regardless. So this is a single sponge. This is also probably a single sponge. This is two sponges, rapidly, one there, I reckon. So, go, go! I did it, minus a few blocks. But yeah, that's kind of, my point of that is just like, oh yeah, you can, some stuff is really easy, some stuff is not, so that and that as well. And then we'll remove, like, oh geez, this is a super sponge, sorry, super shovel, I forget that. But yeah, basically, back to what I was saying, I feel like that's, a pro tip is anything that has lots of lines, you can't really do by yourself. Unless you really love, like, YouTube videos or something on your phone. Maybe you're watching this in a line for a theme park ride right now. I mean, it's like August, late August, so might not be in theme park season anymore. But, you know, if you are, that'd be cool. Let me know if you've ever watched a Toy Cat video in a line. I don't think that's ever happened, but if it has, you'll be rare and special just for a moment. So, yeah, back to where that came off of, which was the Gamescom. So, yeah, what I'm up to this week is I'm having, like, a little bit of a travel week, I guess, because I'm going to Germany for Gamescom, and then from there, I figured, you know what, something I've never done, or, like, never with flights anyway, that I've always wanted to, is to, like, fly from somewhere straight to somewhere else, right? Like, so, I don't know, like, I always fly somewhere, then usually fly home, and although I've done it before where I've flown to another part of the same country, because the United States is big and you've got to get around it. I've never, like, flown to, like, oh yeah, let's just go somewhere else entirely. Let's just do 2 trips in a row, or, you know, 2 countries in a row or whatever. So that's what I'm doing finally now. I'm flying from Germany to Bulgaria. And the cool thing about that I've never done before is it's 2 countries, both in the same zone of the EU. So I theoretically won't even have to go through, like, any border stuff. So it'll be a really easy journey from one to the other, but I do have to, like, train across half the country. It's confusing, and yeah, I'm going to be doing a few things that I've never done before. One of which is, like, this is one that, like, I know is, like, actually quite easy, and, like, it's really common amongst people who, like, want to go somewhere. But is using, like, those, I think they're called, like, a hostel. A place where, like, you sleep in a room with, like, 12 other people. And, like, you always see them in movies because people are, like, telling stories. But I've always pictured them being full of people that, like, you know, want to steal your stuff because, yeah, it's not realistically that way, but that's how things are. So I figured, you know, like, there's never going to be a realistic opportunity where I need to try this. But, you know, like, I could just spring, like, the extra, you know, I'm going to be honest, I can afford the extra, like, €5 and just get, like, a regular bed. But let's do it anyway. Let's see how, you know, like, rather than, like, doing something because you feel like something is bad, a part of me is always like, you know what, you should experience the bad feeling and know for certain that it's something you don't like. And that's kind of my my feel with that. So yeah, I'm going across, not really across Europe, just like 4 days in 3 or 4 different places. Yeah, 4 days, 4 different places. And it's going to be an interesting little thing. And I'm looking forward to recording some 2Cat videos from it. Because one of the things I really enjoyed, like, I really like making the travel videos for reasons I'm not really too sure about. Like, maybe it's just like the whole, like, I'd like to believe this is my, you know, what I do for sometimes. So yeah, I'm going to be making a bunch of those too, and it's going to be a fun time, and I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, that's my next week. It's going to be a good one. Then after that, I guess, because I guess the big thing I've got to watch out for, which I'm still not really prepared for, because I assumed it would be out 2 weeks ago, and it's still not even word on it, is the Better Together update. So yeah, that, I still don't know what I'm doing with the Let's Play, will I move that or not, and also I don't know what I'm doing in terms of like, you know, oh, how are you doing with recording that while you're gone? I guess if it like gets really close and it's revealed it's coming out, I'll have to take like a console with me or something. It's gonna be a weird thing. We'll have to see exactly what goes on and how. Maybe, you know, like this is not it at all, but conspiracy theory Toycat, maybe they're revealing it at Gamescom, because if you don't know Gamescom, you might be like, Toycat, what are you talking about when you say Gamescom? Is that like games.com? No, Gamescom is the biggest games event in the world, I want to say. It might just be Europe, actually, because there's probably a big one in America, but I'm pretty sure it's the biggest in the world. I'd be willing to bet some money on that, because there's something like 300,000 people that go to this thing. And basically, okay, so let's just, oh, geez. Basically, there's a lot of people that go to this thing. It's a really big games event, and lots of publishers use it as an opportunity to announce their new stuff. And that's significant because, you know, like, if it's the biggest one in the world, lots of stuff goes down there that you might not expect, because when you expect big announcements, you're thinking of, like, Comic-Con and stuff, right? Or, like, there's, like, Comic-Con, there's not EGX, there's E3, I guess it would be called, and then there's, like, the one in Las Vegas, I forget what it's actually called, like, it's the something conference, like the tech conference or something. There's like a bunch of events where stuff happens. Maybe I'm talking like a bunch of gibberish to some people. But you know, this is something I followed really avidly for a while. Because I spent a lot of time, just before YouTube actually, like as, I guess you'd call it a journalist, like writing news about games. Because that's what I enjoyed doing. I always wanted to do something with games. And the fact that I do what I do now is pretty crazy. But I always I spent a lot of time, you know, learning about games news and stuff because I had to write about it. So, like, I'd always be, like, following, like, which events is stuff going to come out of, when's the big news going to happen. You know, that sort of stuff. It makes sense in retrospect, but it's kind of, oh, man. It's really hard to deal with a body of water this big, so I'll deal with this one first, because it's, like, 2 sponges again. Oh, just like that, and we're done. Whereas this one's going to require, like, a concentrated effort across all of it. Because you got to get rid of the corners first, but the corners are going to flow back through if you're not careful. And then over there too, oh, and over here, sure. Which is, yeah, it's a real mess trying to deal with stuff like this. Yeah, basically, I used to write like, I guess news pieces. I don't know if you call it journalism, because you know, journalism in like 2017, right, is not the same thing as it once was. It's like, that's the reason if you ever go on Facebook, you just got like, oh, 6 reasons why people who are brunettes are really psychic or whatever. I see a lot of that on my own like personal thing where people are just like, wow, this clearly isn't designed just to make me feel good. It clearly must be that people with the name, no, Katie or something, they must be like 6 times more intelligent. Wow, read this article. And, but yeah, that's this was like a really long train of thought. My point with all of that is I'm going to Gamescom. It's exciting because it's the biggest one, and the reason it's so exciting and like follow the big ones is because I used to be like into the news because it was literally my job, and now like there's like a release cycle in the year, right? Like it's the same thing with like phones and stuff. I still get a little bit excited, even though like I don't have any inside attachment to it for like, oh yeah, every like, you know, just after September, October, we get details about the new iPhone and range up, even though, again, I don't buy Apple products. You know, it's like, ooh, what are they going to do? And then Samsung comes back and they do their own thing. And, you know, sometimes they'll respond directly and be like, ha, 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 ha. You make some fun of the Apple thing, make it better or whatever. It's always fun to see, I don't know. There's like this interesting spectacle sport in technology products, right? Or in any products where there's competitors. Because if 2 companies are directly competing, you know, you kind of get that same, like, you get that rivalry where, like, oh yeah, one of them's got to be better than the other one, and therefore one's going to be a loser, which is, maybe that's just how we see the whole world. There's always a loser, and there's always a winner. Maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should, but that's a thing right there. So anyway, now we have to, I guess, get rid of the last bits of this without a sponge. It should be easy, because, like, I got rid of most of it. It's just, you know, every now and then there's, like, a single bit of water, which is, okay, wait, so just, there we go, just place really quickly. And then we place one over here too, it seems. Again, torches are really wonderful for like finding the source blocks in something like this. Because you can place them, they'll be broken and give them back to you. But if you place a bunch of them quickly, you'll usually fix most of the issue. So now we go back through, we grab all of the sand, we get rid of it. And then we'll have an entirely drained river. And that'll be a pretty good part of the progress for the fully drained, the fully destroyed desert, which is, I don't know, it's exciting to be finally in this moment, right? Like, oh yeah, the river, I mean, the river up to the point where it stops being a river is now entirely drained. You could argue maybe you should go further than that, but I'm not sure if I believe in that nonsense. So, yeah, besides Gamescom and going to Bulgaria, two pretty exciting things this week. I've also been thinking a lot about, because I went to the beach last week, I mentioned that. One of the things that I heard on the beach that like is actually like quite a fascinating thing, because sometimes, maybe this is impolite of me, but it was in a part of the country where everyone speaks funny, so I like to like listen sometimes. I don't know, accents are a really fun thing to pick up, and one of the things that I heard, well, people talking in these like, I guess like you'd call it like East Anglian accent, but like, I know there's something very distinct about farmer accents, right? But yeah, in this like semi-farmer accent, in my opinion, it was talking about like, so what do you think the most common note is, laddie or son? Like, he said something, you know, funny after it, and you know, like I think like, you know, I'm just gonna walk a little bit slower because I'd like to hear this, and he's like, you know, it's probably the £5 note, and he's like, no, it's actually the £20 note, because you know, logically everyone thinks like, well, it's got to be the 5 because it's the smallest denomination, you get the most of them for the same amount of value. But when you think about it, again, this is like a British specific reference, so if you're not from the UK, then, I don't know, just pretend I'm talking about like, I don't know, Skittles or something that you can relate to. But, no, basically, it's actually the £20 note, because every ATM, you know, dispenses those and stuff. And there's something really fun about trivia. I guess you'd call that trivia, right? There's something fun about, like, learning that something you'd expect to be true isn't, in a really, really bizarre way. Because one of the facts that, like, kind of shocked me, because it came up recently, because there's been big news that you can, like, drive on the motorway, even if you're not, even if you're just a learning driver now. It's, like, news or something. But one of the things that came out of that is, like, did you know motorways statistically are safer than regular roads? It's the same sort of thing where you figure, like, oh yeah, planes are so unsafe, but you're literally, like, 7 times more likely to die on the way to the airport than you are on the flight. Like, you know, they're that actually safe. It's just everyone thinks about the time they were unsafe, and there's a lot of weird things like that where, like, I guess, like, the human emotion of something is, like, not entirely attached to how things are. But yeah, the reason I bring that up is because there's just a bunch of these I've been learning recently, and then I realized, like, that's kind of how I make YouTube videos, or did for a really long time. I feel like it's fading slowly, but for a really long time, like, my entire channel was just like, hey, here's a thing about Minecraft you think is true, guess what, it's not really. You're like, you think this works like this, but really it can do this thing too. Like, the kind of unexpected shock where, like, something that really makes a lot of sense, but that you just didn't think makes sense, they're the things that really blow your mind. The things that you can, like, know from the inside. Because if I tell you right now that, like, oh yeah, so, did you know, oh, what am I doing here? Oh, I'm doing it right. Did you know that, like, clay is actually, you know, like, you know, green, for instance, if you put it under this filter? You're going to be like, well, I didn't know that, and there's no reason why I'd ever even think to know it. But if you know something that's on the inside, like, again, if you live in the UK, that £20 note thing, think about ATMs and stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Or, like, motorways. Well, yeah, obviously, how often do you really see a crash on one? It's this big notable event when you see a crash on a motorway, but when you see one on a regular road, it's like, oh yeah, well, that's... You know, you just drove into a ditch or whatever. Because people use them so much more often, because motorways are just from one place to another or whatever. Anyway, my point with raising all of that is that, yeah, the real beauty in a fun fact is when it lies inside yourself. And I know there's something about that which I thought to myself, like, isn't that nice? So, yeah, one more thing also, because so while I had my late friend round, I mentioned last week, yeah, that was the same week. One of the things that I did was, like, in my town, there's, like, this really famous house. I don't know what it's famous for. I should know what it's famous for. But they turned it into a museum and a gallery, and I figured, you know what? I'm never going to go to this thing by myself. How about we go see it? Let's see the culture of my little town, shall we? And, you know, my town surrounding London, that is. But basically, so I went to the place, and one of the things that, like, because it was both a fancy house, a museum, and an art gallery. Like, I guess they're just trying to, like, hit all the boxes of, like, would you like to learn about the past? No. Well, would you like to learn about this or that? You know, it was just one of those, like, tick all the boxes kind of thing. But yeah, the reason the reason I mentioned it and the reason it came up is because one of the things they had at their table was, like, 8 different, you know, like, I'm sure you all can think of, like, a fancy set of spoons and forks and knives, right? Where you've got, like, 4 spoons and 4 knives and 4 whatever. And I've always thought to myself, like, cutlery on that level is just silly, like, because some people get really, really fancy with, like, oh yes, you must have a seven sets of spoons. That's just the only That's the number of spoons you need in your life. Because what if you need a soup spoon, then a dessert spoon, then a spoon for scooping up the leftover milk after your ice cream, whatever it is. You know, like I'm just making up stuff at this point. But like that's a thing that like a lot of people have in their like households, and I've always looked at that and thought like, there's no way this was really a real thing. But yet it is, and it was a real thing back then. Some people still do it today. I've never been to a restaurant which gave me 8 spoons or 8 knives or 4 forks or whatever. Sadly enough. But I was thinking to myself, like, you know, that's just the sign of unnecessary, like, not wealth, I wouldn't say, but like unnecessary fanciness or unnecessary, like, just showing offness. Because I feel like you don't really ever need, I'm pretty sure anyway, you'd never actually need that legitimately. You're only doing that because like, oh, well, this fork is very slightly better. And honestly, to me, eating utensils have always been like the means to an end, right? Like, I've always hated how when you go and eat Chinese or Japanese, you have to use chopsticks, a pair of chopsticks, I should say. Because that, to me, that always seemed like, well, I mean, that's cool that that's how they would eat it if they were eating it in the country it's from, but you know, like I think, you know, it's a widely known secret, although not even a secret at this point, that when you get food that's Chinese or whatever, it's not Chinese or it's not Japanese, it's your country's take on that. So, for instance, if you American Mexican food is very different than Mexican food. Like, they're not the same food. American sushi. The California roll. It's not a Japanese. It's called the California roll. I think you can work out what type of sushi they're. But like you know, like we're taking these concepts and we're evolving them. We're just, you know, the reason we eat these types of food is just because like, oh yeah, they had this cool idea and it's novel and it's fun and stuff. So I've always thought the idea of like having to eat certain things with like certain utensils is just like, well, I mean, isn't the utensil just for me to enjoy it? Imagine if like, okay, so imagine I make YouTube videos, which not hard to imagine, but I make YouTube videos, right? Imagine if I said, well, the only way you can watch these, because in the UK we have, we actually have a different like frame rate standard, but let's just say in the UK we only watch YouTube videos on our PCs. I don't know why. Let's just say mobile phones haven't reached the UK. Or I guess a better example would be a country where there aren't many phones. Let's say I live in an African country where there are a fair amount of computers, but no phones. That's not a country. You know, whatever. Let's just say that was a true thing, and I'd be like, well, you know, to truly get the experience, you're meant to watch on a PC, because that's how things work. For a while, by the way, it was actually like more profitable if you watched YouTube videos on PC. I'm not sure that's true anymore, but fun facts before we go on. But yeah, it'd be really strange for me to be like, well, you have to watch this on your PC because that's where I recorded it, and that's how I would watch it in the UK. But no, it's all about what you want to consume and how you want to consume it. And I know that, like, if you eat sushi at home, you can use forks, and, like, I know usually most places you can just request a fork, but it's, like, kind of frowned upon. Like, if, I don't know, like, it's, going back to the date example, if a date's of you and you're like, oh yeah, let me just use the fork for this Chinese, it doesn't show off too well, because it's just, for some reason, when you eat a country's food, you're just expected to use their implement for the food, which I think would be, I think that's bizarre, but it's just one of those things that I thought about, and I was like, yeah, well, that's not a good idea. So yeah, I forgot my original point was there. Oh yeah, different cutlery. I think the one thing I do agree with, though, when it comes to, like, oh yeah, so have 4 spoons or whatever, is when it comes to dessert, I always use the smallest spoon humanly possible. Because if you use okay, this is life tips of Toy Camp. Before we go, because the sun is setting and we've gone over 20 minutes. But before we go, let's give you the ultimate life tip that can make your life 100 times better, right? So basically, if you're, by the way, we made some pretty good progress there. We're destroying pretty much all the way to the river. But yeah, if you're ever, like, eating dessert and you find it just goes away too quickly, give yourself a tiny spoon. In fact, even if you're not finding that, give yourself a tinier spoon right now. Because dessert is, like, so much more flavorful per bite that even if you give yourself the tiniest spoon of, like, ice cream, you can make that be just as good as, like, the biggest spoonful of ice cream. Because the difference isn't too much. It's already such a big flavor. And that means that you can do some pretty cool... Yeah, that means you'll make it last longer by using a tiny spoon. And you could even eat less while getting more out of it. So yeah, boom. That's like a health tip, mixed of like a culinary tip, mixed of like, maybe that's common knowledge, but I'm the only one that I know that does that. Boom, use tiny spoons for dessert, because then it will last longer, and you'll feel like you got more dessert, and you'll probably eat less, and that's good for you. Boom. So that's a thing. So, yeah, actually, that reminds me, just one more thing before we go, because, I mean... I say before we go, but really it's before I go, is that basically this past week I've been eating a lot more like fruit and vegetables all of a sudden, because I just didn't for a really long time, and I guess, you know, I live by myself, I guess I'm in charge of making sure I eat like a real person. So it's something I've been up to a lot this week, and it's really sad, because I don't know why we don't just make a tasty vegetable. I feel like we have the science to make meat that's not really meat now, right? We can synthesize meat in a lab that tastes just as good as regular meat. Why can't we just make something that tastes like, you know, like something good, you know, like cheese and anything, and just make it technically a vegetable? That's all I want in the world. I think it's really weird when you really get down to it that humans need vegetables to survive, because like, I don't know, like we grow these weird plants that like definitely weren't, or whatever. Anyway, I'm gonna go on way too long of a rant that doesn't make any sense if I talk about this too long. But my point with all of this today is that you should use smaller spoons, and that you should go to a theme park if you want to meet someone for the first time. Boom. Dating tips with Toy Cat. I hope you'll enjoy today's video. Like it if you liked it, because it helps out the channel a lot. Let us know you do like the desert destruction. Again, this is like, I feel like maybe like a Let's Play episode or two away, so I might do this for 2 episodes in a row. I usually don't do the same thing, because I'm always like jittering around. But I feel like, yeah, we just have like one big section over there, one big section over there, and then one big section going around this thing, and then it's just all done. And we'll have this big open area. And I'm looking forward to seeing that personally. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I'm really excited about the future of this Let's Play world right now, and hopefully all of you are too, even if we don't know whether it's transferring or not. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.